we have a quorum between here and at home. So we will move on with our agenda, and part of that agenda is approving or modification of the agenda. So Sean, I believe we do have a modification. Could you walk us through that? That would be great.
Yes, under the consent agenda on the personnel report, under the education support staff, we're removing item number 1.
What number? Under the consent.
Want to just say that again, Sean?
Yep. And the consent agenda on the personnel reports on page 4 under education support staff, we're going to remove item number 1.
Good. And Sean, can we also move the student of color presentation to, we are moving that, correct, Tricia? Right? Did you see that, Sean? If we could do that at the same time, that would be great.
Yes, and I don't see it currently on our current agenda, but rather than item, go ahead.
Right, Sean, it was item 11.2 on my printed agenda here, and we're going to move it, right?
We're going to move that to be item 4.1 to make sure that our students can actually have some time to rest and not be with us all evening long. So the motion is to move item 11.2 and place it as item 4.1.
Very good. All right, and we have second by Moira. Tricia, if we could just call the roll, then we continue to move on.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Coyle,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris, Nicola Fave,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm, Ann Reichlin,
Yes.
Patricia Wazaloo.
Abstain.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Passes. And so we will go ahead and just go ahead and hear from the Student of Color United Summit. And we will do that now. And then we'll move to public comment.
Okay, I and a few others are going to talk just about our experience, but first I'll give you a brief sort of like rundown of what happened. I'm going to share my screen just so that you can see pictures. We do have some pictures. Hang on. Can you see the pictures?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hi, okay. I'm Willow. I'm a senior at IHS, and I was one of the students that helped plan the Student of Color Summit that happened on last Friday. It was on the 21st, and there were a bunch of administrators, Miss Lucy Linder and Miss Goldsmith. I saw them both. So I just mentioned their names, but there were a bunch of other administrators and a bunch of other students that all worked together to plan it. What essentially we did was we brought together students of color from IHS, from Boynton and DeWitt, from LACS, and we even had some students from New Roots all to come together with performers from different schools. And we, as student planners, we essentially made a program. We figured out merchandise, like we gave out t-shirts and things, and we planned the whole day so that students could come and experience a summit, I guess, together with other students of color and all discuss and talk. And it was really hard amid COVID, but you can see in these pictures, these are some of the pictures from the event. So on the bottom right, we have pictures of performers. This was a dance that happened. On the bottom middle, you can see we got meals from Wegmans. So people were able to all have meals provided. And then the top right and the top middle pictures are all pictures of students listening to their performances that were going on. To either we had speakers and we had singers and we had dancers, and we also had a college panel that came. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience planning what went well with me, what went well, and some things that we struggled with, just from my perspective. And then I think we have 3 more students here. Hopefully they're all here, that will share their experiences also. So the things that I thought went pretty well, first of all, the performers were all amazing. It was a little bit tight on some of the scheduling just because students were trying to get students together, and we were kind of planning a lot of things around it. And there were different complications with COVID and with people traveling out of town for the weekend. So planning the performers was a little bit tricky, but I think it really came together in the end because we had a lot of fantastic performers. Trinity was one of the performers. She's here, so maybe she can talk a little bit about her experience actually performing at the summit, but she sang, I believe. So maybe she'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think that all of the performers were super talented, and for the most part, people were generally pretty engaged in the performances. The t-shirts and the bags that we gave out were both designed by Ava Thomas. She's also here. And those were fantastic and beautiful. And I guess it's a similar scenario. We had some trouble kind of getting it to come together, but in the end, they all really turned out fantastic. So some things that I think that we could work on that would have made it go a lot smoother. I think that communication, both between students and adults and just like among the students individually, could have been a little bit better. I think that kind of communication issues across the board kind of contributed to a lot of the things being a little confusing, or maybe people weren't on the same page. So I think that engaging students and adults more collectively would have been really helpful. Also, this is not something that really could have been changed, but it was really hot. And so the venue, we were going to do it on the turf, and we moved it to Sweet Field, and then we moved it to the field that's behind the workout room. It was all outside, and it had to be outside because of COVID, but I think in coming years we could move it inside or something like that because it's really, really hot out. But the last and kind of main thing I wanted to talk about was that I think that it was a little more formal, I guess, in terms of the students than it needed to be. We sat students down in chairs, like in sections in chairs, and that needed to happen because of COVID, because we try to generally keep the schools isolated from each other just for contact tracing purposes. But in the future, I hope that we can strive towards a more student-oriented, I guess, like system. I don't know. A more student-oriented event, because it would be nice to have the students be able to talk more amongst themselves than just be solely focused on performers. So those are some of my takeaways from the event. But overall, I thought it was really awesome, and it was really wonderful to kind of see all of the students come together. I had multiple people come up to me and say, hey, I didn't think this was going to be this cool, but it really came together, and I'm glad I attended. And I saw lots of people that I basically hadn't seen all year because I've been at home for most of the year with school and because of COVID. But it was really nice to see not all, but a good amount of the students of color across all of the different ICSD schools come together in one sort of unified event, and for us all to be experiencing the joy of all the talented performers and just each other all in one event. So I thought it was really awesome. I think maybe Ava will talk next about her experience, but I'll hand it over to her.
Hi, I'm Ava Thomas, and I am a junior at IHS. And what I want to talk about is a little bit more about the communication. I definitely think that had something to do with COVID because we couldn't really see each other. And once we met in person to do like our walkthrough, everything was just coming together. You know, this is our first time. This is the students' first time. This is the adults' first time. Like we all were testing it out. And so like we did have problems in the beginning, not like problems, but like we weren't meeting as often as we should be, the students. So then we made our own private times to meet, and then we talked to the adults about it, and they were super supportive. And then we really came together in the end, and I'm so thankful for that. One thing that Willa mentioned that I helped create were the t-shirts and the bags, and I'm really thankful for all the adults that like had their input on it, because I've never really worked on a project like this before, and so like having like their ideas for everything was like super cool. I just had a really fun time, and in the future I hope we can do more events like this. I also hope that we can like mingle more, like we had to stay separated because of COVID and we didn't get to talk to the middle schoolers as much. But I think it's really important to talk to the younger students, especially because this is about coming together and seeing that like there are people that look like you all around you, and seeing that like, I don't know, I feel like if I were seeing more people of color, because I feel like we're really separated in the school setting, and just like seeing everybody like older kids, I'd feel like I wasn't alone and there was people there that looked like me and I could be like them. I'm not too sure who wants to go next.
I can go next. So like both Willow and Ava said, I mean, it was a great event. From my personal standing, it was really, really powerful to see so many students of color in one place together, something that I think most students of color have not experienced in such a way where we're all united. And I don't know, it was really powerful. And a really special event, and I'm glad we could do it. Like Willow and Eva said, we did have some communication issues, but I think it all worked out beautifully. And I do think this is going to be an event to remember. And I really hope that we can do it even better next year. The performances were awesome. I did perform, and we were able to wipe down the mics and stay safe while also doing different performances and spoken word, and making the event as unique and fun as, yeah, it was a success in my opinion.
Angeli, are you here?
I am.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I would love to speak, but yeah, I was one of the MCs and also one of the event planners for this youth summit, and I I really enjoyed it. As Willow and Ava and Trinity said, towards the end, we just saw everything just come together and really just turn into this beautiful, fun event. And I had many friends because I have a sibling in one of the middle schools. I had a lot of black and brown students from one of the middle schools come up to me and say this was something that I've never experienced before. It was so good to be, it felt like a community, it felt like a family. It felt like I wasn't alone, because at the end of the day, when you're walking around in school, here in the Ithaca City School District, when you look around you, you don't oftentimes see people of color who look like you or resemble you. And having this event once a year or however many times a year in the future will just remind students like me that, yeah, we are here, we are present, and this was meant to make us united. And I think it really did that in more ways than we think it did. Like having people from all backgrounds here at this event was just so beautiful and so nice to see. And yeah, the performances were wonderful. They were all incredible, especially Trinity. You were really good too. And it was so nice to see. And I'm so thankful that this event ended up being as great as it was. And I can't wait to do it next year.
Yeah, well, I came kind of late to the planning, so most of my experience was kind of like being a spectator and a part of the audience. And, I woke up Friday morning feeling invigorated. I felt so excited because I knew that there was so much work being put into the planning of this event, and that there was nothing like this that I've ever probably experienced before. And so I walked out of the high school building, and to see so many people that looked like me, it was indescribable. I felt comforted. Like the overall feeling of the event was just pure joy and comfortability and power. And I felt like I didn't need to be tense like I am in school sometimes. You feel relaxed. You feel like you're around people who are supportive of you, people who are part of your family. And I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and they're both at Boynton Middle School. And the feeling from the middle schoolers was the same. We had so many people that told my brother and sister, like, wow, this event was amazing. We had so much fun. When is there going to be something like this again? And I feel like to empower so many young people of color, this event was just like amazing.
Um, Hi, I'm Mwape. I was one of the 8th grade planners. I was invited a little last minute by Mr. Mitchell to just briefly share a little bit of what it was like being on the planning committee and having the summit happen. I think it was really nice that we were able to create this sort of sense of community with students of colors in the district. I know that a lot of students of color don't often feel like we get to be heard or seen or together. And I think having this event was important in having us just really like connect and know that we're not alone and that we're really just together. I do think in the future we can work on some of the communication issues that might have happened while planning. You know, there's always going to be something from the previous time that you can learn upon next time. But overall, I think it was a really nice event. I really was happy that we got to let it happen, being able to like see so many of my friends that I like talk to every single day, be there and really enjoy it was just amazing. And the performances were just, wow. It was so great. I think that we got to bring everybody in our community together. And it was just a very great experience.
I know I already said something, but I want to say something really quickly. I really want to say thank you to all the adults that helped help us. They gave us this opportunity that was like absolutely insane. Like I never thought that this would have been happening. Like, I don't know, it was just such a great experience. And I'm so thankful for all the adults that helped put this idea together. And they gave us, I don't know, like we had our voices were heard as students on the planning committee. And I'm just so thankful for the adults that helped us.
So that's all the students that we have who are either on the planning committee or just attended or somewhat a little bit of both. But we can answer any questions that anyone has. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see different people.
Thanks, Willow.
Thank you.
Board members, any comments, questions?
Hi, this is Chris Malcolm. One great job to all of you. I wish I could have been there in attendance. I'm sorry I missed it. I've got a two-part question. What was your compelling reason to make this happen? You know, what was driving it? And I know it's something different for each one of you. And what would you have added that you weren't able to?
Yeah, so in terms of what the reasoning, I guess, for me is I was invited on to this idea and we just kind of heard, oh, Student of Color Summit. Oh, hi. We just kind of heard Student of Color Summit. And initially I was like, what does that even really mean? But as we talked more and more about it, I think I was just so excited to share an experience with so many other students of color. We talked a lot about how it was fantastic to see others like you, but I think that when you're in a space with just other students of color, it not only is really joyful and exciting to be surrounded by those with like similar experiences, but it also, I guess, creates a pathway for a lot of conversations that can get stamped over by people who aren't people of color, especially like students of color in the ICSD district. And so not only was it interesting to I guess just be able to have like random like, oh, hi, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while conversations, but I think it also created a good space to discuss some similar experiences that we had as students of color in ICSD. And in terms of your second question, it was what would I add next year? I think So we talked about it. Logistically, it might be a little tricky, but we talked about it and ultimately decided we couldn't do it. But I think that highlighting some of the small businesses of students at IHS, especially students of color, would be a really awesome idea. Ava talked about it a lot in our planning meetings, and Ava has a small business, as I know a bunch of others did. We did a raffle. So we did a raffle where small businesses, both of students and some of the administrators, donated like some of their products to the raffle so that we could do that. But I think it'd be a really cool thing to maybe do like, oh, like a pop-up shop section, or just giving a shout out to students who've been putting in a lot of work, because I know there are a lot of those, especially at the high school, and I'm sure in even younger grades too.
I want to say something really quickly. I think it was important for us to see each other. I just know that like in almost all of my classes, I'm the only Black person or person of color in that class. And like, it's just like heartbreaking, I guess, to not see anyone that looks like you and like wonder if that you deserve to be in those classes because you're the only one there. And so like, I thought it was really important for all of us to see each other and know that we're, you know, there, because it can be hard to like see people of color in the hallways. I think that in the future, just making this a bigger event and expanding it and marketing it better and like letting everybody know about it. And obviously like COVID did have like play a part in it, because at first we were supposed to like have negative COVID tests. And that was definitely discouraging for a lot of people, because I know a lot of people were kind of scared to like get it up their nose or whatever. But I really hope that we can expand this in the future.
For me, it was like Ava and Willow said, it was really, really empowering. Like Ava said, we don't see people in our classes as often as I think we should. I have had personal experiences in ICSD. I mean, I've grown up in this district where, you know, you do feel ostracized. You do feel like you're that other person. And it honestly made me emotional coming home after the event, because it was like, wow, those were a bunch of people of color and students of color, and we all just had a genuinely good time, and there wasn't any, you know, bad reason why we were getting together. It wasn't like, oh, some other Black dude got killed, we had to get together. It was genuinely like just celebrating us, and I think that was so powerful. And as for the second question of what can we do in the future, I just want to make it bigger. So I just hope that we do what we need to do to get COVID gone so this can be bigger and we can involve more and more students, because I think it was definitely an empowering and important.
Also, this thing was all about unity. I remember going during lunch and walking around to grab some more people, and I stopped at one of my friends and she said, hey, I asked them, hey, do you want to come to the youth summit? And she said, oh, I don't think I should go. I don't know if I'm one of the people that should be going. And she was somebody who was of mixed, she was mixed, she was half Black, half white. And I think this was an opportunity to make it less separate, like to stop the separation between each minority group. It was to bring us all together. And I think that unity was really, really important. Having, as I said before, from all different backgrounds and all different minority groups and races to come in and have this event was really good, and it was really important. And I hope that this continues more and more, because the unity that we need between us all is really important.
For me, what made me interested and really motivated to be able to do this is in the past, I've struggled with being able to be like proud in my Blackness and being able to be proud in the fact that I'm a person of color. And so having a time where students of color can come together, students of color like me and my friends and people that I don't even know, and for us to all just be like, hey, we're people of color and we're proud of it, and we can be proud of this, and we can have fun with each other and be able to accept this part of us, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's I think it's something that was really important for me personally, considering what like just what I've dealt with like in like the past, and how I've been coming to terms with it. It was a very important thing for me. I think anything that I would have added or changed, but I wasn't able to, is definitely, I think, like some people mentioned before questions, is that planning something during a global pandemic is difficult, and not being able to have people really like mixed schools a lot was definitely, I think, something I would have changed if I were able to. Of course, given the circumstances, we have to be safe, but having people sit for a lot of the time and just watch is something I would have probably changed it so that it was a little less formal and like a little less loose, you know?
Hello, Ava, Willow, young people. This is Eldred. I did stop by and I saw the joy in your collective faces. We've had some people ask us as a board, I'm sure Dr. Brown has heard this, why would we support something that separates young people out by the color of their skin? You all have mentioned some excellent reasons. Isolation, sense of belonging, joy, to resist this feeling of shame, given what we're seeing in the media around being in these Black bodies. But I have one additional question that I'd like you to answer if you think you can. Is how will these feelings translate for the rest of this year and maybe even going into next year in terms of your experiences in the school? You're going to go back to your individual classes. There may or may not be Regents tests. You still have to strive academically. Can you talk about what you think will be different about you and how you all interact with the existing school system moving forward? Thank you.
That's a really hard question. I think that a lot of the change that we focus on in the school system in terms of, just addressing race in the school system focuses on changing changing the way that white people see students of color, which to some extent I think really is an effective way to do that. Like, there are a lot of things that need to be changed about ICSD's approach towards students of color. But I also think that just having this event made me realize how ingrained some things are in myself. Like Mwape was talking about, a lot of the confidence that I should probably have in myself, as I know that I'm, a smart, capable individual, a lot of that confidence is dampened, I guess, inside of me from different experiences being a person of color. And so I think that this was an opportunity for me to really see what I was capable of and see other people like me achieving, and really work on struggles that shouldn't have been put into me, sort of, but have been. And so I think that having a summit where I was able to express myself and have conversations with other people who were like me really helped me in terms of that confidence. And so how that would translate to the school system, and at least my performance in school, is like, I guess, things that one might not even think were struggles for people of color in the classroom, but like just raising my hand when I'm not completely confident of an answer, or asking questions in class. All of those things have to do with my personal confidence. And like I said, my personal confidence has really been affected being a person of color. And so I think that this event was really a way for me to kind of gain some of that respect for myself back. The other thing is that I think that there are a lot of the same people. I see a lot of the same individuals of color when we have a lot of these conversations about how ICSD can change. A lot of the same people are involved. And while they're all super fantastic, wonderful people, and I'm so unbelievably thankful that they're involved in these conversations, it was really nice to kind of get a wider scope, because a lot of the times the people who, like, I've talked at a board meeting before, I talked at one of the staff teacher meetings, but that's just me, you know, and I only have one perspective. And it's, I think, the same for a lot of the other people here. You're really involved in the school, and there are a lot of people who aren't really involved in the school and don't want to be. So it's nice for us as students to be able, us as students who are pretty involved, to be able to connect and hear opinions and ideas and thoughts from other people of color who aren't the people maybe to get up and talk at a board meeting, but are still opinionated people with valid ideas and thoughts. And so in both of those ways, I'm really excited at the progress we've had at our meeting, at our summit. And I think that we can use those conversations, and I personally can use that confidence moving forward in the school system.
To touch on what Willow said, I feel like every day I walk into my classrooms and I see myself in the classroom. And once I get in through that door, I don't expect another person of color to come into my class. And so going to an event where you see a lot of people of color whose existence and intelligence is validated just by being in that space encourages you to push forward, to not just accept the bare minimum, but to go above and beyond, to prove to each other that you're strong as a community, and together we can move forward, whether it be in school, extracurriculars, careers. It was just great to have that whole event be kind of a networking experience. As I said before, I walk into the classroom, I don't expect to see another person of color coming after me. So to walk into an event where I see a bunch of people of color in that event, you just feel like, wow, we can do anything.
Similarly to what Ava said, I believe that I personally think that something that this summit should make everyone realize, every student of color, is that we simply just cannot be overlooked. You know, there are a lot of, there were some keynote speakers at the summit, and something that I noticed in some of their like speeches is that they share, and we all share an experience, they all shared an experience of being overlooked or silenced or just not cared about enough when they should be in this district. I think a lot of, if not most of the students of color that I know have gone through situations where they are targeted in some way for their race, and the people that they speak to just don't care enough to try and help them, whether that be to put an end to whatever's happening, to comfort them. And it's a big thing of, I think we're a huge community in this district, and we're not often heard as much as we should be. I think, like, even I've had experiences where I've been targeted and because of my race, and bad, like, people have done like bad things because of my race, and the people I speak to just don't care enough to try and stop it. And really can have an effect on you. And what I hope this summit can make us all realize is that we are strong enough and a large enough community to be able to be heard. There were so many people at the summit, and that wasn't even the entirety of students of color who are in the school district. There are a lot more. So we all need to realize that we are strong and all of our voices are powerful and we are loud enough to be heard, and moving forward, we should be heard.
I'm just excited to keep on doing things like this. Like, the work is not done yet. Like, we need to keep on having more summits. We need to have more meetings. We need to get more people, like not just seeing the same faces all the time. Like, I think it's really important that we're like reaching out to everybody and everybody's voices are being heard. I think that this summit brought confidence to a lot of us, and I think that's one of the most important things, is like knowing your worth and knowing that you deserve to be here. And I think that's one thing that we'll take into our schools, is that we're all confident enough now, like we can see each other around, we can see each other. Like, it's harder in schools, but like we're gonna have these meetings. Like, iRise is a really great club, and I'm hoping that it can expand and give more opportunities to more students of color.
Going off of what everyone has already said, I think that in reference to what Willow said earlier, ICSD has a long history of reactionary change. And I think what we need to focus on now is trying to change the future and not just reacting in the moment saying, oh, this is happening right now, so we're going to do something about it right now. I don't know. We needed this summit way before it took all of this to happen. And this has been happening for years, but now that it's so publicized, it feels like this summit was a reaction to that, and a good reaction to that. But we need to keep it going and hopefully expand it to the younger grades, because I know that first grade me, whose teacher told her her hair was ugly and she didn't matter, could really have used an event that said, you are powerful, you are strong, you are more than just a statistic, more than just a number, more than just a grade on a paper. You matter, you're exceptional. Like, I really think that we can take this into school now and be like, be braver when it comes to standing up for ourselves, be braver when it comes to speaking up in class and saying that's not right, or this isn't okay. Not letting ourselves be pigeonholed into this stereotype, which so many of us constantly find ourselves in, and showing the community that we are a group that is incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful and incredibly smart, and we can do so many great things. And yeah, I just feel like we can take this with us wherever we go outside of school too.
Yeah, with what Trinity said, like, students of color, we exist. We always exist. We existed then, we exist now, and will exist in the future. Summits like these are reminders that, yeah, we are present. We're always present. We're not present when a huge crisis for our racial group happens. We're here every single day. And when it's not publicized, we're still going through these situations. And I think summits like these just keep the momentum going of just trying to work to have unity between us all and equality between us all. And because yeah, we always exist, we always will exist, and we are important, we are exceptional. And yeah, as I said, summits like these are reminders of that, and I think they're very, very important to have, especially when in Ithaca City School District, where you don't see us in every corner of the school. You know, coming together like this is, yeah, coming together just opens our eyes up to who's around us when you when you might not notice them before. So yeah, these are very important events to have and continue throughout the years.
I would just like to thank you all for sharing your experiences with us and being so eloquent, and say to you that I am so happy to hear that it was such a positive experience, and also so pained to know that you went so many years in the school district without having a positive experience like this. And that's one of the lessons that I'm going to take away, and how this can expand so that it doesn't just happen at the secondary level, but how can the district provide opportunities to empower students of color every year that they're in the district. Thank you for your time.
Nicole, did I see that you wanted to comment?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nicola Fave. I want to thank the students and the adults for planning the summit. I stopped by towards like 1:30 because I was grouped in with the elders, though I don't think I'm old enough to be considered an elder. That's another part of the conversation. I want to say that it was super amazing just walking into the space. I'm hearing what all of the students expressed in terms of representation, a sense of belonging and inclusion. Seeing older Black people there that I haven't seen in the past year was very powerful and really affirming. I think it was Trinity who spoke to the point of, the importance of Black joy, and how often, regardless if you're in Ithaca or just geographically, sometimes we only get together, and we Black and brown people get together in a stage of mourning and pain in terms of someone passing away or someone being killed. So there's so much power and healing in creating those spaces of affirmation and healing. So just thanking all of you for creating those spaces. And I think it's really important to, as we think to the future, how do we continue to cultivate those spaces? Because I don't believe that the students should have to wait another year to feel that. Just seeing the administrators that are on the calls, I'm hoping that there'll be conversations in the buildings around what students are sharing in terms of thinking about Ava, who's a junior, who I remember from BJM, having this experience for the first time at 16 or 17, and how are we thinking about our kids in elementary schools and affirming their experiences and not having to wait for this. And I think that goes back to the point of reactionary change. So how are we being the catalyst for change and not being reactionary to what is happening sociopolitically? So again, just wanting to thank all of you for creating this event, sharing your own personal truths, and also like Pat, feeling personally pained to hear all of you express discomfort, feeling isolated, not feeling powerful, because that is not a way to navigate through the world. So sending you all so much love and thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Hi. So I first want to thank my colleagues on the board, Chris and Eldred, for asking the questions that they did that elicited from you such eloquent sharing of what you've experienced before the summit and during the summit. And for me personally, it has really enhanced and deepened my understanding of what my daughter experienced going all the way through the school district, BJM, and 4 years at LICS, and then graduating from Ithaca High 20 years ago as a person of color. And so your words have really deeply affected and deepened my understanding of what she didn't have and what you didn't have for most of your schooling. And I feel particularly strongly because I have a grandson who in a year or two is going to be starting in this school district. And I want him from pre-K to be feeling what it took so long for you all to experience. Thank you.
I just have a brief thing. I'd echo whatever everybody has already said, but just really congratulations on a phenomenal event. And just thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It really means a lot to hear what that experience of the summit was like. So really, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Sean, do you wish to weigh in, or we do have a long agenda ahead of us?
I can be quick. My spouse, Nicole, was part of the college contingent and came back saying that she was empowered and inspired by our students. So thank you for the work you did. We know it's a long journey. We'll keep working together. But she was definitely, you had an impact on us in the elder circle as well. Just know that.
No, thanks, Sean. We're going to let you all go. It was a great hot day, but powerful evening tonight. Thank you for using your voices and sharing with us. It has been impactful. Know that, and you can hear it from everyone here. So thank you again. We'll let you go and have the rest of your evening, and we're gonna have to move on. But Willow, everyone, thank you for just a great event on Friday. So we'll
Thank you so much, everyone.
we'll move on.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. And so we will move on, and we will hear on to the rest of our agenda, and time for a public comment period. And Moira is going to help me with this. And so we're going to get started. We will hear from folks here first, and then there's some online. Those of you who wish to speak, you will come up. We ask you to come up and speak at that microphone there. You will be able to be seen and heard at that spot. So we'll go down the list, and you have 3 minutes, and we'll get on.
And we have 7 people signed up who plan to speak in person and 1 who is speaking virtually. And please excuse me if I mispronounce a name. So the first person on the list is Vinta Prabhakar.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for letting me speak. I'd like to use my time this evening to call into question the decisions that ICSD has made over these past 13 months and their disastrous effect on the physical and psychological well-being of every student in the school district. What has long been necessary is it, do I need to do something? What has long been necessary is accountability on your part. It's time to take responsibility for the damage you've inflicted on these students over the past 13 months. If you had been truly following the science instead of submitting to the hyperbolic narratives avidly pushed by politicians, selected corporations, and their mainstream media adjuncts, you might have done the research and discovered the following. A COVID case is not the same as an infection. A case is defined by a positive PCR test. Its inventor, who won a Nobel Prize, explicitly stated that PCR should not be used as a diagnostic test. A PCR test multiplies, amplifies trace amounts of mRNA fragments to a level that they can be measured. PCR tests with cycle thresholds over 35 demonstrate that only a tiny amount could produce a live virus in culture. PCR tests are extremely sensitive, so much so that 85 to 90% of positives are meaningless. You may also have learned that the average age of those who die with COVID-19 equals and in some countries is greater than, the average life expectancy. During the Spanish flu in 1918, average life expectancy was 56, and the median age of a flu death was 28. In 2020, the average life expectancy was 81, and the median age of death labeled as COVID is 81. 95% of these deaths had on average 4 comorbidities. 78% of these individuals were clinically obese. You might have learned that results from at least 14 randomized controlled trials do not and have not supported universal masking as an effective means of disrupting transmission of respiratory viruses. Additional studies demonstrate the vast physiological concerns that accompany extended masking. Perhaps most importantly, you would have learned that neither asymptomatics nor children are drivers in the spread of this coronavirus. You're educators. There's power and privilege in that position, and it is your responsibility to protect children and model the process of critical thinking. Instead of promoting health, you placed them in front of screens, you closed playgrounds, you took down basketball hoops, you made them wear masks for hours at a time, even while exercising. Most egregiously, you inflicted this harm on the youngest children who have the most to lose by these unscientific policies. Where is your Jiminy Cricket? Where is your sense of inner moral imperative? Am I almost done? I just will leave you with 2 thoughts. Adults are supposed to take care of children, never the other way around. And here is a quote from Carl Sagan. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It is simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we have been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Michael Bryant.
How's this? Does that sound good? Okay. Before getting started, I just want to say if anyone wants any documentation for the statistics data that I'm about to present, please ask me and I'll provide that to you in person. And then thank you, Tricia, for fielding our emails, and thank you guys for doing this in person. Okay. I am going to talk fast because I want to try to squeeze a lot in there. So I'll try to be as clear as possible. Thank you. Okay, as a baseline, it is important to recognize that pharmaceutical industry is currently the most powerful industry in the United States, spending $306 million in 2020 lobbying Congress, doubling even the military industrial complex. They are by far the largest revenue stream in US media, largest donor to the CDC, the World Health Organization, and have complete capture of the regulatory agencies. Through this, they control public health policy and influence how the public think about public health policy. For context, the average age of a COVID death in the United States is 80.2 years old with 4 comorbidities, exceeding normal lifespans of US citizens. Globally, the average age of a COVID death is 82 years old. The survival rate for any healthy individual with COVID under 70 years old is 99.97%. At present, according to VAERS data in the US, there are over 4,200 deaths and 220,000 adverse events attributed to the COVID vaccines in only 5 months' time. This exceeds all vaccine deaths combined recorded over the past 20 years in only 5 months. Harvard studies showed VAERS system only captures 1 to 10% of adverse events. The actual figure of what we're experiencing today is without a doubt far higher than the staggering figure already being reported. All of this with a current 2-month backlog of recorded events due to the system being unable to process the number of reports coming in. Add to this over 10,700 deaths and 400,000 adverse events recorded in Europe. Some of the adverse events reported: seizures, heart attacks, blindness, paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, strokes, transverse myelitis, excessive menstruation, abdominal pain lasting for weeks, and death, okay? These facts alone should put an immediate halt to these experimental medications and would have in the past. Rotavirus vaccine canceled for 15 deaths, swine flu vaccine canceled for 25 deaths, and are only allowed to continue due to the above-mentioned capture of the political and regulatory processes. It is widely known that for kids under the age of 20, the statistical chance of dying from COVID is 0.0003%, statistically zero. There is no medical reason for any child to be involved in this experimental medical procedure. The COVID vaccines are EUA products, unapproved, unlicensed, and experimental. No court has ever upheld a mandate for EUA vaccine. It is unlawful to conduct medical research on a human being, even in an emergency. According to the Federal Trade Commission guidelines, promotional material involving health-related products cannot mislead consumers or omit important information. For but one example, if students have not been told about vaccine antibody-dependent enhancement before receiving a spike protein injection, then they have not been adequately informed. Whereas the current EUAs given for these experimental medications confer indemnification for the manufacturers, companies, schools, and all other institutions or individuals are not protected from liability. Are you aware that you do not enjoy such liability protection? Here we are circa 2021, with children being turned into experimental bodies for large moneyed interests that have decades-long track records of corruption and harmful practices. And educational institutions have been turned into pimps, marketers, and distribution centers for a convicted serial felon, Pfizer Incorporated, whose corporate rap sheet includes billions in fines, fraud, bribery, and misrepresentation of adverse events, among other crimes. One of the most unscrupulous and fined corporations in U.S. history is who we are supposed to trust our children's health to, and you have allowed them to set up shop in our school. The simple fact that there have been no long-term safety trials for any of these products and no animal trials, all animals died in previous mRNA trials, should have immediately disqualified all of these experimental products for consideration. Anyone who supports, condones, normalizes, or stays silent on a global experiment on children is guilty. It's that simple. There is no other way to characterize the current mass medical experiments except as reckless and dangerous and a violation of all medical ethics. In closing, I would like to say there is a lot of dissent out there from various experts, scientists, doctors all over the world. You do not hear from them because the media, which is owned by pharmaceuticals, will not allow you to hear from them. I'm not talking about one or two outliers, hundreds and thousands of them. Look at who Sucharit Bhakti is, this most cited microbiologist in the history of Germany. See what his story is. John Ioannidis from Stanford, the most cited United States scientist across all fields. See what his story is. Martin Kulldorff, Harvard. Sunetra Gupta, Oxford. Carl Hennigan, Oxford. Peter McCullough. Why aren't you even allowed to hear from these people? Think about that. All right, thank you.
Next, we have Ram Venkat.
Close enough?
Go ahead, please.
All right. All right. Hi, my name is Ram Venkat. I'm here to talk about two things: the perceived risk of asymptomatic spread and the associated culture of mask wearing that the district is promoting. It's my understanding that masks are recommended by the CDC to prevent the spread of COVID. This guidance was based on research data that showed that COVID was spreading via airborne transmission and that masks were effective in stopping the spread. This recommendation was also applied to asymptomatic people, also known as healthy people, since they're suspected carriers and considered spreaders of the disease. Recently, when the CDC changed its guidance on masks for vaccinated people, I was intrigued and started looking into any associated research online and ended up looking at Cornell's COVID-19 surveillance testing website. The information on this website was very useful since Cornell has tracked thousands of surveillance tests, which are all done on asymptomatic people. This is one of their requirements, that you come to the surveillance test site only if you're asymptomatic. Since August 2020, when the testing began, Cornell has tested approximately 4,000 to 5,000 asymptomatic people every day. According to this website, the current rolling 2-week average for positivity rate on campus for asymptomatic people is 0.02%, which you have to admit is extremely low and not significant enough to act like we are all spreaders of this disease. About a month ago, I reached out to the school and asked why kids are required to wear masks when playing sports such as tennis, where it's easy to maintain social distancing, especially when you're playing. The district, after giving the usual response that masks are required by New York State Department of Health, acknowledged that in outdoor settings, the risk is lower. Then they went on to say that the rules are not based on risk, but instead based on, I quote here, encouraging a culture of mask wearing and encouraging a culture of being sensitive to other people's perceived risk. I thought this was interesting. On the surface, this sounds great because it sounds like you're trying to teach the kids to be empathetic. But when I asked whether this approach would continue after the mask mandates are lifted, the answer was no. This means the school is merely using the medium of education to get the kids to follow the rules. This does not teach the kids to be critical thinkers, but instead to follow the rules blindly. Given the extremely low rate of asymptomatic spread and the school board's responsibility to properly educate the kids with facts, I ask that you stop teaching the kids that they are carriers and spreaders of this disease, especially when they're asymptomatic, and stop requiring them to wear a mask. Please let them be kids and have a childhood. This has been going on for way too long and for more than a year now. When will you push back on such requirements and advocate on behalf of these kids? And when will you consider the risk benefit and the emotional, psychological, and physical harms that you're causing them? Thank you.
Next, we have Maytali Novak. And I just want to remind everyone of the 3-minute limit.
Okay, so I wanted to briefly ask you some questions relating to the vaccination clinics that you are offering and promoting to children in this community, especially now that the vaccine is being administered to 12 to 15-year-olds. So I'm wondering, first of all, if you've thought of the risk-benefit ratio as it pertains to children. So when looking at from the Pfizer press release website, the initial trials, the only trials that were done, to my knowledge, on 12 to 15-year-old kids, I believe there were about 1,130 children in the COVID vaccine group. I believe those children were followed for 2 months. So from this data, we're now rolling out this vaccine to millions of children. So my question is just a common sense sort of question from a layperson. How do we know anything about the potential adverse reactions from such a small sample? How do we know about long-term outcomes? We're giving this to prepubescent children. What about potential fertility concerns that have been flagged by experts that are nowhere on mainstream media? I'd like to see the data that this is completely safe in the safety studies before this is rolled out to this degree, especially given the risk-benefit to ratio for young children. So just in comparison, my understanding is that an average vaccine takes about, on average, 10 years to go from start to finish and be disseminated to the public. I know that times have changed. I know that we have increased technology capabilities, but this is really dramatic to me. So I'm concerned about just the way that this is being rolled out, and especially having these vaccination clinics in schools. I'm also concerned about the pressure, the undue pressure that will be placed on children who may not feel comfortable. The families may not feel comfortable, but they will be pressured just from being in this setting to go along with something that they may not feel right about. This is an emergency use authorization. This is not fully approved. I don't understand how for children, I know for older adults it's different, But I know for children, it's not an emergency. The best of my knowledge, if anybody has any other information, please let me know. But I just ask that you please do your due diligence before any harm is done. Thank you.
Next is Jessica Stein.
Not seeing Jessica.
Oh, Jessica Stein's not here. Next is Lori Labont.
I have several questions. And first, I'd like to start out with regarding the vaccination clinics. Are those vaccination clinics going to take place on campus? In the event that something happens, who is liable for anything that happens to these children? Who's paying for these vaccines? A lot of people have this preconceived notion that vaccines are free. Does anybody know who pays for them? Do you have any idea who pays for vaccines? Which vaccine are the children getting? Are they part of a placebo? Is there part of a placebo group in this batch? Because this is a study. Again, I'm going to reiterate the same thing that everybody before me, I think, has touched on. This vaccine is under emergency authorization, which gave it just the open rollout. And now we're rolling it out to children who are not in high-risk groups. And there's lots of unanswered questions. And for a school who is the front line of defense for these children, a safe space for many children to be able to go to, this is a really scary situation. As far as the masking, there are so many states that are open now. Kids are going to school unmasked. What's the difference? Does anybody here look at the data, or do we just keep falling in line with what we're being told by the Tompkins Health? And does Tompkins Health look at the information in other states? There's a lot of questions, and I don't know if anybody's actually looking at the answers or looking for the answers or digging, or if they're just being told from one agency or one group or one individual what they need to know. And is that all they need to know? Will these children have informed consent? Informed consent for a child doesn't exist. They don't drive cars, they don't have licenses, they don't drink alcohol. There's a reason for this. They are children. The informed consent then should fall to the parents. And there is no informed consent with this because we don't have the data. It's an emergency use authorization. There are not clinical trials that give you enough data, release data, to know what the overall effects could be. As Mike indicated, there in fact was a study with using this mRNA technology on ferrets. They all died. They had to stop the study.
Ms. Labont, you're now over time.
Okay, thank you. I hope that you can address these questions. I hope that you do your due diligence as you're the first line of defense for these children. Thank you.
Next, we have Jackie Moon.
Hello.
My name is Jackie. I've lived in Ithaca, worked, studied, paid taxes here for about 10 years. I'm here today because I read on the IHS website that the Tompkins County Health Department today started offering the Pfizer COVID-19 experimental injection in school for students as young as 12. And I thought that must be a mistake, like maybe it was a misprint, because the health department, school board, admins in charge, they must know the facts by now. The facts that this is experimental injection, like everyone has said, it hasn't been approved, only for emergency use authorization. The fact that this is the first injection of its kind using this mRNA technology on humans without any long-term studies completed. We're still in the post-marketing data collection phase of these vaccine trials, so there's absolutely no factual basis to support any claim of them being successful in any way, like some experts are stating. And I hate to quote the corrupt CDC, but according to them, this injection does not protect someone from getting COVID-19. It doesn't prevent someone from spreading COVID-19. The only thing that they're claiming it might do, but again, no data, is keeping someone from having visible or intense symptoms. So if anything, this injection is going to turn these kids into asymptomatic or silent carriers, so it will be less obvious if they have it, thus being actually easier to spread. Furthermore, it's a fact that this injection directly interferes with a patient's genetic material, therefore alters the individual genetic material, which is genetic manipulation, which has been ruled inhumane and unlawful in the Supreme Court. So I'm just very confused about all this, how this is happening in the school. And I honestly, I don't even have any kids in this district. I don't even have any children. But these are my brothers and sisters that you're doing this to. And it's child abuse. I feel like if you're honestly advocating for children, like now's your time to speak up. And if not, maybe you shouldn't be on a school board. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, a lot of stuff that everyone has already said, but if y'all are okay with hosting these clinics where caregivers are not allowed to be, which is really gross, by the way, then you clearly don't care about these children, but do you care about yourselves? Do you want to be on this list of superintendents and boards that are currently getting sued by people all over the world? Because, I mean, someone needs to be held accountable if, God forbid, one of these children get hurt or worse. Like many have already said, you're the first line of defense, and maybe parents aren't even aware of the risks, but that's could be a job for you guys to spread the word and just let them know what's going on. Yeah, that's all. But I do hope that you are real advocates for these kids, and I really hope that you guys help them and act, because now is the time. Thank you.
And next, virtually, we have Dr. Dinesh Dara.
Can you unmute my camera, please? Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, my heart, first of all, goes to both the groups here. The first one to the students of color. I mean, these are real stories, especially Trinity and Mowape. The Trinity that somebody made fun of her here, and Mowape, it looks like definitely needs some help. So I hope this board will help. Board and the superintendent himself, I think, should give a call to both of these students and get to the bottom of it, if that teacher is still here or was it somewhere else. And Mowape, I think that sounded very, I mean, she didn't explain all of that, what she is going through, but I'm really, really, yeah, hurt by it. I am a concerned parent of my child, and also a concerned community member for the children of this community. And I'm going to share some data with you guys. If you could unmute my screen sharing, please.
Doctor, you will need to be concise.
Yeah, or I'll just show you for 1 minute. Yep. If you can just unmute my screen, if you allow me to share my screen, and I will. So this is what I look at the New York State education, what they think of the school district. So I'll show you only 3 points, and that will give you a pretty good picture where the school district is. Let's look at the Enfield Elementary School, 0%.
Excuse me, doctor. I'm sorry, but you've shared this information with us last time, correct?
No, I
is there a
have to,
reason?
yes, and my questions are going to be different, and that's what I'll share with you. Okay, so just want to share with you that assessment here, 0% passing in English, and probably 20% passing in math. Then I'll share with you the average class size here. 7 students, okay? And then I will share with you one more interesting part of the report card here. This district has 12 principals, 6 of them are inexperienced, 50% inexperienced, and obviously the Enfield is, I mean, one principal is completely inexperienced, okay? And I'll just share with you one more data point, and then I'll ask you my 3 questions.
You're now over time.
Your overtime, you can ask a question, state your question, to pick one, and we need to move on.
Okay, I am very impressed with you, Mr. President. That's good. I'll come there next time in person and I'll share with you. My 3 questions for you. Who is the person who's proposing that you can have 7 students classes? Number 1. Number 2, who is approving that you can have 7 student classes, run the 7 student classes in this district? And third, who is accountable? Only 0% passing. So you not a single kid is passing in there. And I can show you this one for Beverly J. Martin, and I can show you the same thing for Boynton Middle School, the math classes. Are you guys, yeah, let me not go there.
Last question, doctor.
Yep, this is it. So yeah, help me understand, are you guys doing your job correctly, or you guys are just having fun? Thank you.
Are we good?
Yes, that's it.
Very good. Board responses?
I'll start. There's a lot of talk about facts tonight. Fact is, more than 590,000 Americans have died from COVID in this country. Worldwide, 2.1 million people are confirmed dead from COVID, but scientists estimate that that's probably closer to 15 million because countries are not reporting it. Countries are either hiding numbers, they're corrupt, or they cannot handle it. If you watch the news, whether it be mainstream or other contacts or whatever, you'll see what's happening in India right now. This is not some normal average thing. Talking on a very personal level, when I hear people talk about how we shouldn't wear masks and how children aren't at risk, it stabs me in the heart. I've spent the last 15 months at home because my son is very much at risk. And shame on you for not reading about that, okay? He is not the only child in this school district at risk. There are children at risk. When we talk about comorbidities, as if it's an actual human being's fault that they're at risk because of coronavirus, that's just wrong, okay? My son is healthy, but he has multiple other things going on, okay? And because of him, I know many other people who have children in the district who have the same situation. So when you're talking to us about how this doesn't affect children, and when you're telling the school board how this doesn't matter, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, and you're not doing the research, okay? I am in touch with doctors at Boston Mass General and people at Johns Hopkins and specialists in Rochester's for personal reasons and for professional reasons. These are not media doctors. This is not Sanjay Gupta I'm talking about. These are doctors doing the work. And they all say that they're scared that we're taking down mask mandates, that we need to keep masks on our children, that we do not know enough about this virus because it's new. Science is solid, but science evolves, okay? I'm not gonna get in a vaccine debate. The one thing I will say is remember that some of the sources I heard and some of the facts I heard are from QAnon. The one person who said, let them be kids. Yes, I would love to let our kids be kids. And some of our kids cannot be kids if all kids are not wearing masks. And so when we talk about getting rid of masks as if kids should run free without them, you are being selfish and forgetting about the kids who are high risk. And I want to remind you that there are still kids at home who need to be at home. There are still kids in school who need to be have their mask on, and they need to have their peers have masks on. And I don't want them to be forgotten anymore. It's ableist, it's wrong. And I want y'all to remember that your world is not the only bubble that exists. There are many other conditions that we're living in, and I hope that you consider that. Thank you.
Any other? This is board responses. You spoke. I know. All right, so. Board responses.
Can we just continue?
Everyone has had their chance to speak. Your time is over. We're going to move on. Others, thank you. Any other board responses? Eldred, go ahead.
I thank everyone for speaking. The data you presented is obviously well-researched, given your authorities, and we should appreciate that, even if there are alternative opinions. And I guess that's my entire point. Throughout this entire pandemic, there has never been a single story. There's never been a single source. These statistics have been debated by experts much smarter than I am, with many more degrees. As for our authorities should be obvious. They're the CDC, the state health department, they're our local Tompkins County Health Department. When we take these positions, we have to hold our hands up and say, our job here is to represent the existing laws to support the Constitution of both the country and the state. We're not free agents when it comes to making these decisions for 6,000 kids and however many families that represents. The last thing I'll say is for those of you who came up here and spoke at this podium and addressed the school board as if these decisions are ours to make, you should run for these positions. In fact, if you beat me, I'll be glad to take you under my wing and tutor you. We have 5 bargaining units we have to negotiate with. The superintendent, no one on this board had the capacity or the authority to tell teachers what to do. The teachers have their own sources of research. The teachers have made their own decisions about whether or not they're going to come into class. And we worked diligently by the Lord's grace to get as many small people back in person in elementary school. Given these concerns, given these edicts, given the space in the classroom we could dedicate, given the budgetary concerns about trying to keep everyone involved safe. At the higher levels, adults were making their own decisions. decisions that they think are in the best interest of their families. And again, if you think we had the authority, the 9 of us up here, including our colleagues on the screen, I'm not trying to say this pejoratively, I really mean it. Call us, come and talk to us. Run for these positions. You too will learn the limitations of what we are capable of doing, given the laws in place and given the direction handed down to us. I want to talk about liability. What if we ignore those directions and the child gets sick? What if we ignore those directions and the teacher can't go home safely to their family? What if we ignore those directions and the lawsuits start to eat away at our resources? This is a complicated situation. Again, I do not want to sound like I'm schooling anyone or being pejorative. I really appreciate what you guys said. That was some, I could tell you've done your homework, but it's not the only lesson. It's not the only homework out there. We aren't gods.
Anyone else right now?
I would just say there have been dueling facts presented this evening, but Ms. LeBlanc asked some very concrete, about some very concrete facts about the vaccination clinics that are happening here. So I'm wondering if one of our administrators can answer those questions.
I appreciate that. That would be great. Lily, thank you. And we as a board, we as a district, we cannot mandate that employees get vaccinated. And certainly we have no power to force children to be vaccinated. We have no policy that way. But Lily, please go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Nice to see folks. Can you hear me better? Thank you. All right. Yeah, thanks for the questions. So there were a few questions regarding which vaccine, who's administering it, et cetera. So the Tompkins County Health Department is utilizing our physical spaces, and their insurance provides all liability coverage, right? So we're simply hosting the vaccination clinics, and the Tompkins County Health Department is running them, right? So those are all folks through the Tompkins County Health Department. Caregivers do have to provide written consent. So they do a registration link, and then they provide written consent as well. And then, so it's both. It is the Pfizer vaccine, right? So that's the one that's currently approved through EUA, although, we just saw, gosh, was that yesterday, that Moderna may be available soon as well for younger students. And I believe, was there one more question?
Yeah, Lily, it might be better if you took up your mask while you're speaking.
I can be even louder and more clear.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions that I need to address?
There was a question. I wrote them all down. Who's paying?
Yeah, so that's all run through the Tompkins County Health Department. So my understanding is that they receive the vaccine and in a reimbursement through FEMA.
And it is the Pfizer?
Correct.
Just to be clear. Okay.
And just to clarify again, no child would get a vaccine unless their parents had specifically signed for that permission, correct?
Correct.
And you may not know the answer to this, but another question was, will there be a placebo utilized? And I would suspect no.
Lily, there was one other question, maybe behind the question that I heard, whether that we are informing parents about any potential dangers that the vaccine possesses.
So we provided a full copy of the emergency use authorization in the initial communication. And with the registration, we also provided from the health department a one-page synopsis of that. We provided links to it on the consent form as well. So we provided it also on the website. So we redirected families to that as well.
And just to clarify, because this came up with, there is no requirement, correct? That no student is required to receive a vaccine for the coronavirus, correct?
Correct.
And that was reiterated by Governor Cuomo, I believe, today, that that could not happen under current conditions.
That is what he's reporting, yes.
And currently the vaccine, in terms of who is able to take it, no child under the age of 12, correct? Is that still the current?
Yes.
Okay.
And I just want to follow up on this one point. Coming at school boards does nothing because we are never going to, we would never have the power to mandate a vaccine unless the state of New York says that students have to have it, like they mandate measles, mumps, rubella, smallpox, some other things. And if the state of New York mandates that children have to be vaccinated, then we can't fight that either. And we cannot ignore that mandate because it is New York state law. And we are sworn to uphold New York state law. And we're not going to violate it in either direction.
And just regarding masks, I am vaccinated. I pulled mine down. There are 27 states that have declared that they are maskless. They can go without masks. New York State is not one of them. It is my sincere hope that by fall, New York will be one of those. And we just have to keep pushing forward as we have throughout this past year in this pandemic. And assuming we have a good summer and we can get to the fall, and I certainly hope that masks will be optional. But again, that depends on conditions, and I believe the conditions will be such that New York can move to at least optional masks for those who are vaccinated as far as adults. But hopefully by the fall, we can have full enrollment back in school, in classes, reduce the social distancing. It's really a trade-off. Can we reduce social distancing if some wear masks? I mean, it's just, we are at the mercy of New York State and the federal government. So, certainly take your concerns to Governor Cuomo and the Biden administration. They are the ones who are calling the shots. We are trying to do the best we can for the children of this community. That's why we're here and that's what we do. But it's a damn long process, I can tell you that. But
I just want to add
last thingy, and then we'll
add
move
one
on.
other piece. There was another assumption in the conversation that we would somehow, as the 9 of us, be of one accord on this, and then take the further step of substituting our own opinions in these issues of battling facts or the opinions of parents and caregivers. That's one I found offensive. And if you all really think hard about what you're telling us to do, you might understand why I would find that offensive. Because it's certainly not our role as a board to try and usurp the power of parents and caregivers regarding their own children in mass.
Nicole, Sean,
I guess
are you okay?
I was just going to read something that I wrote. After something, just a personal testimony. After much apprehension and anxiety, I made the decision to get vaccinated while acknowledging that I don't trust our government and intergenerational trauma is real. Black and brown bodies have been used for experimentation throughout the course of American medical history. American medicine was built on the backs of African slaves. This history is painful and traumatizing. So why did I decide to get vaccinated? I thought about the leading causes of death for Black women: diabetes, heart disease, cancer, racism. And I finally thought, what's in my control to mitigate an early death? I decided fighting racism and COVID simultaneously was the battle I didn't want to fight. I also decided getting the vaccination was a risk I was willing to take to have more time on this earth with my children. As I am combating racism and health disparities that plague communities of color, I do find some solace in being protected from a virus that is killing people of color at disparaging rates. I truly encourage everyone to make decisions regarding their health that feel emotionally and physically safe for them. I want to acknowledge the concerns that everyone brought up tonight. They're very real. People have real feelings against pharmaceuticals, about vaccinations. And I think that it's important for parents to feel empowered to make the right decisions for their children. I also think it's really important for us to think outside of our first world view in terms of, when are we going to let kids be kids? Because there's some kids that are street kids because they sleep on the streets. They're kids that work on coffee farms, that work on children, that work in sweatshops. So while my 3 kids hate wearing a mask, it's keeping them here with me. And that is something that I am okay with, because there were conditions that they could be living in. So obviously all of our kids are not loving it. But as Aaron and many people have said, there's so many things that we don't know. And I think that we have to have compassion with each other and understand that a lot of us are blessed, regardless if you're religious or not. We're still here, and there are hundreds of thousands of people that are not. There are many kids that did not receive the kind of education that our kids received here, even though there are plenty of families and parents that were not happy with the education that they received here. So I'm just always trying to lead with compassion and acknowledge what everyone is saying, but also just wanting us also to think about folks that are less privileged than us and have nothing to give, that don't have anything to lose.
Thanks, Nicole. Sean, Chris, can we move on? Do you want to weigh in, or?
I'm still processing Nicole's words. Thank you for sharing. It's going to take me a minute to reconcile my own feelings about that. The same decision I had to make against my want and desire, but also wanting to hug my mother. Dr. Guru, you framed a question that was rhetorical and meant to be something that was instigating a conversation. And I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you last time. Give me a call. We met last week. It was a much different conversation in the tone and tenor than this evening. And I don't know why, but I'm willing to continue having this conversation. So you can give me a call at some point in time.
Thanks, Sean.
Rob, I don't have anything to add that my board colleagues didn't share already. I just want to clarify the implication or the intended message that we are forcing vaccination on children. This is a parental decision, and we are providing a space. But everything, and I want to commend Nicole because what she said was spot on. And I know there's all different sides to this. And when you look at the human factor and mask wearing and things like that, this mask wearing is a small ask, okay? And you can tell that to someone who's been on a ventilator or has lost a loved one. And there are several thousands, hundreds of thousands of people out there who have experienced that. And that's all I've got to say.
All right, thanks, Chris. And so thank you all for speaking, and thanks for the responses. Student reps, we're going to ask if you could go ahead and move through your statements and any updates, and we do need to finish up our meeting.
Okay, hi. So in the recent weeks, AP testing has begun for some students, and both in person and online. This is a stressful time for many students, especially with all the changes that happened this year. So we wish students luck on the test, and we hope the district will support them as well. The sophomore class is holding a fundraiser. The junior class is also planning their first in-person event of the year, a Capture the Flag night in 2 weeks. The senior class will be holding a casino night and a senior mixer, both in person. We are grateful to that all these class officers were able to still hold these events because they really mean a lot to some people and can help connect the classes. The IHS band is holding a chamber recital in person on June 2nd, but make sure to email Mrs. Zhao as spots are limited. Many clubs are winding down as well, doing fun activities, holding talks, giving their own lectures, and participating in their final competitions of the year.
Grace, we can't hear you. Still unable to hear you, Grace.
Okay. Zoom. Great. I hope we can get off this fairly soon. So today we would like to bring up the topic of sexual harassment and assault at school. Unfortunately, sexual harassment is a big problem on various school grounds in the Ithaca City School District as a whole. In an Instagram poll conducted in the past few days, 53% of 160 respondents who identify as women say that they have experienced sexual harassment at school with an ICSD, and 24% of the 112 respondents who did not identify as women also said that they have experienced sexual harassment at school. Overall, that is 41% of 272 respondents. We also sent out an anonymous form for students who would like to share their experiences with sexual harassment and assault. A sad but unsurprising number of students stated that although they reported their situation to an adult, no measures were taken to prevent this type of disgusting behavior from happening again. Sorry, Grace, we still can't hear you. So clearly these numbers, as well as the stories heard directly from students, show how prevalent sexual harassment and assault is at ICSD. This is a tragedy in and of itself, and we believe that there is a clear way to preemptively combat future sexual harassment, which is expand consent education for elementary and middle schoolers. In the same poll, the most common response to the question, what more should ICSD do to combat sexual harassment in school, was requests for in-depth education, especially for boys, on sexual harassment and consent, starting from an early age. We feel that it is incredibly important that the district factor in sexual harassment and consent education when developing social emotional learning curriculum for young students, so that students may learn from a young age on what is acceptable and what is just not okay, because it's so common that people reach their senior year of high school when they take health before really learning in depth about sexual harassment and the effects that it can have on people. And we also believe that there should be more training for staff district-wide on both educating on sexual assault and consent, as well as dealing with instances of sexual harassment. I know that in recent weeks, there's been a lot of discussion on creating more curriculum to support young students, and we implore the board to consider adding education on sexual assault and consent to those curricula. Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, Chris.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so this is another point that goes with kind of the school information. Connecting with what was presented about the Students of Color Summit, many students said that it was nice to connect with everyone as a community and to see the incredible performances and speeches. Although many other students have mentioned that it would have been great if the event was more open to all representations of people of color. And personally, I would like to add a note that we should be consciously using the term people of color, as this word applies to all non-white minority races and not just one specific race. For example, just in this presentation about the Student of Color Summit today, I'm a person of color, but I didn't really feel that my community was being represented or included in this conversation of people of color.
Thanks, Grace. Board responses quickly, if you wish.
Well, I just have one comment, just because I won't comment on everything, but about the issue of teaching consent. I think that's a great idea to do that in the high school. And just to follow up, which you might not have the answer to, at what grade, or would it be through health, or like at what point in the curriculum do you think would be most effective? Maybe just for the thought, right, for the moment, but you have any thoughts on?
I personally think that the younger the better. I know that everyone has different opinions on at what age is it appropriate for sex education to be introduced. I think that at the bare minimum, it should be much expanded upon in 7th grade health. From my middle school health experiences, consent was the half hour that Planned Parenthood came in 8th grade and nothing really more. And I think that's really a shame. And I think that 7th grade health and expanding that curriculum is the bare minimum, in my opinion. I think that I personally think that it would be beneficial to introduce consent education as part of education on puberty that starts in elementary school. I think those should go hand in hand. But I'm sure that there are educational psychologists and other people who have much more knowledge and experience in this field than I do, who you have access to for these kinds of deliberations.
I am not an educational psychologist, but as a faculty member in the Department of Education, we spend a great deal of time having these conversations, and there are curriculum that is devised from pre-K through 12th grade that talk about forms of consent in different ways, about boundaries, about respecting people's bodies. And so it's a question and a conversation that we can have with our teachers and our administrators, and firmly agree, as we know, particularly on college campuses, this is a unfortunate, massive topic we've been dealing with in multiple campuses, not just in our local campus, but firmly agree that we can expand consent education, and we'll follow up with our unions, our educators, and our administrators.
Adam, you may recall that your mom was instrumental in bringing a particular book to us. Why am I blanking on the name? Beartown, I believe it was.
Beartown by Frederick Backman, yeah.
Yes, which we used to introduce the topic of sexual harassment, sexual assault. I know we started at the high school, and to be frank, all the COVID drama, I kind of lost the thread of how many students were involved. I know Samantha was integral in making sure at least all the sports teams discussed this thoroughly, because it was a situation in the book was a situation that arises out of a hockey team. So I don't want folks to be left with the impression that it's not on the agenda, but it hasn't been discussed. That book, in particular, that your mom exposed us to, was certainly not appropriate for younger grades because of the content. But I would like to hear from one of our executives at some point, maybe not tonight, about what we are thinking about this topic age appropriately in our social emotional learning curriculum work. So hopefully we can get some insight on that, and we can discuss it at another time, but it's I think everybody here realizes it's well past due to have this conversation. Thanks.
See, Maura?
Yeah, coincidentally, I'm looking at the consent agenda, and we have funds coming in from IPEI. One of them is going to be used for a project at LACS called Shifting the Culture, Confronting Sexual Harassment and Assault Among Teens. So they're certainly looking at it. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and to seeing if conversation and work comes out of sharing of what they're doing with folks at the high school, student group at the high school, and then looking at the whole larger picture of how we are addressing this topic within, as Eldred said, our social and emotional learning curriculum.
And I would just like to follow up that I agree completely with Adam that the younger, the better. And I believe there is a place for talking about these subjects in an age-appropriate way in elementary school. I remember a conversation I had with my younger daughter one year when she was a rather young person at a play with, let's say, some very adult content. And I asked her if she was comfortable with the subject matter. And she said, oh yeah, we learned about this stuff in kindergarten. I said, how did you learn about it in kindergarten? And she said, dolls. And like, I didn't even know, but she turned out really solid. And I think we can expand on that.
And I just want to add, it seems like a good place for professional development, really. Having young children I see in my own house, consent doesn't have to really talk about body so much as respecting no and respecting stop. And that actually also starts with teachers when they handle students as well. So I love that you brought this up, and I think it's something that we can definitely keep on our radar moving forward, and it should start in preschool for that matter.
Thanks, everyone.
Can I just add, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add,
Go ahead.
thank you, Adam, for bringing this up. Like Erin said, I think professional development is really important, especially if the report is saying that students have reported things to an adult and nothing came of it. So how is our staff being, what is their personal experience with talking about sexual assault and consent? And I think talking about at younger ages, what no means, especially I'm personally just thinking about people hugging me post-COVID and thinking like hugging is consensual. You need to ask me about that. So I think there are ways in which we can talk to young people about consent. I think it's really important to acknowledge that as adults, some of us are dealing with being triggered by trauma of those experiences. So sometimes they're not the best resources when students are coming to us with their experience. So I think reaching out to the Advocacy Center would be great if the admin team could reach out to the Advocacy Center because they have bystander trainings for different age folks. So I think that would be a great next step.
Thanks, Nicole, as always. I think thanks student reps from Ithaca High, and thanks for the responses. And I believe it would be great if we can move on to consent and the rest of the meeting. So consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Thank you, Maura.
Second.
Who seconded?
I did.
Oh, thank you, Pat. And Chris, I will only just point out that, those appropriations, sizable appropriations for the Discovery Trail from IPEI, and certainly, kids discover the trail, several couple of tranches in there, 43,000 and change, and 21,000 and change from IPEI, just for kids discover the trail. We always appreciate that. It's an outstanding opportunity for kids across the district, and so we always thank IPEI. Chris, anything else that you wanted to touch base on?
Just want to point out 6.6, which is the transfer of funds. Turns out that we had money left over from the 2008-2013 capital reserve due to a reduction in the cost of projects, and that will be moving into the district reserve fund.
Well said, Chris. Well said. Any other questions? Can we vote? Yes, we're going to vote. Thank you. Tricia, go ahead. I think if anybody wants to ask a question, they can while we're running through.
Rob, I don't want to ask a question. I just want to make sure everyone understands that we're voting on the updated personnel report that we discussed.
Correct. The modification to the agenda was passed earlier, and that one item in the personnel report will be dealt with at a later time. Excellent.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole LaFave, Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichland,
Yes.
Patricia Wazelin.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. And Dr. Brown, I'm sure you must have something to say after all
I
this
have
stuff.
very little. I thank you for the opportunity. I do wish to yield my time to our friends from IPEI and partners who've been waiting so patiently to share some exciting news. Please.
I was wondering why IPEI was here. But,
That looks like a check.
it's a really, really big check. So,
For having us this evening. I am Beth Pallas, the Executive Director of the Discovery Trail. I am a proud collaborator with IPEI and the Ithaca City School District as we coordinate the Kids Discover the Trail program for the 17th year. This is an exciting time, one that we had not planned for to be virtual, but this year, the team of educators from each of the Discovery Trail sites pulled out all the stops and learned against some really steep technology curves to make sure that they still saw students' faces even during this challenging year. So our goals for the program are to enhance classroom learning through an experience-based field study, provide equal access to the Discovery Trail sites, promote respect and understanding among students from different neighborhoods via buddy up trips, and expand community awareness to the resources along the Discovery Trail. So some key numbers that I wanted to draw your attention to on the next slide. We have been in operation with ICSD for 17 years. This year, we were able to participate in almost all of the school districts except one. So we were able to also see 15 individual schools, 3,869 students. That's in the entire county of Tompkins. And we provided 245 field study experiences. The numbers marked by the asterisks are from last year's very challenging, abrupt end to in-person learning. So we have made some progress, though these numbers will increase next year. So
we want to share with you tonight some images of what KDT Ithaca
looks like this year for our students and for our educators as they worked remotely from their locations to meet the students, both literally and figuratively, where they are, to make the programming, which they work hard every year to update and make accessible to every student. And I was struck by the connection that we can draw from the first presentation in this meeting, the importance of creating community, and the importance of spending time together, that it is one of the goals underlying the curriculum inside KDT Ithaca. And Beth gets to share with you tonight the ever expanding program that was born here, that started with the ICSD and has expanded to all but this year, every school and every district in part across all of Tompkins County. So I wanted to highlight also that 60% of the funds that support this program are donated to the district by our community members. And if we could highlight the next two slides. If we go to the next slide, thank you. I want to take a moment and just say thank you. We won't read the list of names, but there are individuals in our community who sacrifice their treasure, their time, and their talent to make this available to everyone. Every student in our district has access to the Discovery Trail and to the great and amazing educators in those sites. And the next slide. We also recognize that it's not just individuals, it's businesses, it's organizations, it's foundations that believe in what we're doing and believe in equity and access and are excited every year to hear from me and hear from Beth and support our students on these adventures.
And on the next slide, we would like to recognize the transportation department. I am the child of two transportation professionals, so it's only proper that I get to do this one. I think that this really is one of the critical pieces of this program that ensures equity, that each child get to be transported to a Discovery Trail museum, library, science center, a location that they would not otherwise be able to attend. So a special thank you to transportation during this very, very, very difficult year. They moved over 3,000, I think 4,000 books, kits, materials to students. And I know as a parent in the Ithaca City School District, and Steve and I talked about this, the bus pulling up to deliver supplies to my children was the most thrilling time of the week. So they really provided a sense of connection during a very difficult time. So thank you so much to all of the transportation and logistics folks in the district who move these materials to children's homes.
We always try to stop by and welcome them to their year, and we missed that this year, but we'll be dropping by with snacks and goodies to say thank you in the next couple of weeks. We also have to say thank you to Randy Beckman, who's not here, so can't yell at me for using these pictures. They are totally just findable on the internet. Randy, the long time coordinator of all of these trips that Beth has referenced, will be finishing her full-time position with the school district. And we were told we could say that.
Yes,
We're good.
she's
Okay. I'm not in
retiring.
trouble. Okay. So Randy, but will be joining us in some way next year to bring on her successor, not her replacement, because that's not possible. But thank you, Randy. You are not here. You are hopefully safely landed in Israel, welcoming and meeting your new grandchild. So mazel tov, and thank you to Randy. And I would be remiss to not say for our final slide, thank you to the school board. Thank you to Dr. Brown for what you do, for what you make available in this collaboration. And to anyone out here today, anyone who's listening, if you'd like to be a part of this process, if you'd like to learn more about how you can support getting these students to every trip, to every location, visit ipei.org/KDT. and look at the opportunities to be part of the program or make a gift today. Thank you all so much. I try my best to bring a really large check every so often that I come. So Beth and I have for you a almost real $64,000 check to support this project for all our students.
Outstanding, outstanding. Beth, thank you, Steve. We like to get big checks, but we love IPI. Stan, it is one of the treasures that we have in this district, that we are able to call on IPI to support what the kids need or opportunities that would not otherwise happen. So great, thank you. We're going to bring Chris up to, do we need a break while Chris get set up? Let's roll through.
I'm okay.
You good?
I'm
All right.
either way is good.
We don't care about the guys at home because they're home, but Chris, because they can do anything they want and come back. But Chris, good to see you, Chris.
Hello.
You're going to do stand-up. That's
How's
great.
everybody?
Chris.
Yeah,
That's,
I'm gonna fall asleep back here if it's, it's getting late. All right.
Chris, nobody knows how exciting the OACM meetings are.
You are
now they're
missing
going to get
out.
an idea.
You are
We
missing out.
appreciate that. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So we're gonna get controversial, right? Because no.
It's not that late, Chris. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to talk about two things. There are three chunks in this presentation, but I'm going to gloss over one of them. The first one is about some trends in educational design, right? What we're seeing, some of the things that we're doing at Tetra Tech, some of the things that we see other architects and engineers. There might be someone who doesn't know me. My name is Christopher Glaubitz. I'm an architect by training. I'm a project manager for Tetra Tech Architects and Engineers who are up by the airport. Proud father of grads, IHS grads, classes of 2020 and 2015. So thank you, everyone, for providing my children with education. Okay. If you hadn't noticed, school districts have to deal with a lot of social issues, right? And so when we talk about our facilities, how can we support that, right? Technology, health, the environment, a lot of things that we heard about tonight, as a matter of fact. And so part of what we're trying to do as we move forward with planning future phases of the project is try to provide facilities that will address those issues. And I'll talk about a few of those quickly tonight. And then I'll kind of skip over some of the stuff that we're doing in phase 1 and phase 2 and the ongoing projects. We have that documented, and feel free to call me if you want me to walk you through that stuff. And then we'll get into a little bit of planning for phase 3. So let's go to the next slide. Technology, obviously this is infusing all of our spaces. And the main point here is that it is allowing spaces to become teaching spaces that weren't before. Hallways, cafeterias, other things. So moving forward with that, a lot of people are thinking about what that technology can do in schools. Let's go to the next one. Health, I'm going to touch on a few items that our buildings can address with regard to the people inside them, social emotional learning, indoor air quality, which is something that's been in the news quite a bit lately. I'm going to touch on a couple other things. Let's go to the next slide. There are a few things that facilities can do, right, to take away some barriers from students and adults that have some neurodiversity. Lighting is something, you switch off a bunch of lights, that can be very jarring to students. So, simple things like providing dimming, providing different light levels. We're required to provide 50-foot candles on a desk, but that doesn't mean you have to have the lights on all the time. If you have another option, you can vary it up. You can have spaces very simply help students transition from one activity to another. Acoustics is another big thing, to control the type of sound, control the stimulus that a lot of students hear and can be distracted by. Let's go to the next one. Biophilia is a concept that a lot of people are talking about, which speaks to humans' innate desire to have a connection with nature. So when we're in facilities, and Ithaca has a lot of great opportunities to connect with the outdoors and to provide through materials, through water, through little moments, that connection that can be healing to students and adults. So the extent to which we can weave that in, that's something a lot of people are talking about right now. Let's go to the next. The WELL standard is one of the most recent sustainability standards. You may have heard of LEED, There are a lot of them out there. Well has a recent health and safety rating that they developed in response to COVID that is largely an operations and maintenance plan. It's something that you can, it's a structure around which you can more easily use best practices to keep your buildings healthier. Because I mean, school districts more than a lot of other things, the thing that you are producing, the reason you're here is humans, developing young humans. And so we can provide facilities that can support that to the best extent, then we're hopefully helping your mission. Okay, next. Outdoor teaching spaces. So, we've been doing this for quite a long time. Your teachers are very resilient. Up in the middle there, this is a little outdoor impromptu classroom, but we can certainly provide spaces, and a lot of people are having a lot of different visions about what an outdoor teaching space could be. Next. Sustainability continues to be a big issue. There's a lot of discussion about beneficial electrification. One of the things that is in phase 2 is a ground source heat pump. You may have heard a lot about heat pumps. This is a geothermal system that will go a long way toward decarbonizing that building and allowing that building to operate just on electricity, which can be produced sustainably through wind and solar and other means. Next. Okay, social structure. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how some classrooms can work differently, how community spaces could be enhanced, especially as so many of our children are coming from a situation where they have not been in community. We heard a lot about that tonight, and how Willow and Ava and Trinity and others talked about how powerful it was to get together, right? And so when we can provide spaces that will support what the students can do with it, that's what we're here to do. Security as well. So let's go to the next one. So collaborative project-based learning, something people are talking about quite a lot lately. We think about the STEM spaces, we think about shops, we think about areas that are flexible, that allow students to do lessons together. They have some technology, they can break up, they can be together in larger groups, and just very flexible spaces that can handle different types of projects. Let's go to the next slide. This is a space that we designed, again, just with lighting. So this is one space, but a variety of different lighting conditions, very simple, with switches on the wall. So, you can go from lecture mode. This is a science classroom. You can turn the lights off. You can turn the other lights on and help students transition from one lecture-based scenario over to their lab station. So that sort of lighting control to help like neurodiverse students and stuff transition better. Mentioned that technology can now allow a lot of spaces to become learning spaces. So you'll see in Area K, after this coming year, there will be a couple of those spaces incorporated out kind of in the hallway, where students can have individual spaces to do some work out there and expand the variety of the types of spaces that can be learning spaces. Next. Some architects are talking more and more about imagining a group or a suite of spaces that can substitute for a couple classrooms. Again, this is speaking to a variety of spaces, smaller spaces, larger spaces, to allow education to happen in a little more differentiated way. Cafeterias can probably work harder than they're working for you right now in your district, right? If anybody's eating while they're doing some work, you'll understand that our students are probably doing it too, right? So we can provide cafeterias that will support that, support them working and living in ways that combine social, taking care of their needs, getting work done in an environment that's comfortable to them. Next. Yeah, libraries are now called media centers. I want to let you know. So, I like a physical book, but there is a reality that young people are getting more and more of their information digitally. That has a big effect physically on what a library media center needs to be and what it needs to offer our students to provide them with opportunities for research and other things to support their learning. Yeah, this learning stair is something that folks are talking about. And I wanted to mention this now, again, in the context of coming back together. So these communal spaces that can start to, sort of form the heart of a school, and the students can imagine what sorts of events they want to have here, just communal spaces that support people coming together. All right. This is Act 2. I'm going to just skip kind of over this, but suffice it to say that there are a number of projects in various phases of construction and design and planning. The next like 10 or 11 slides, could we just go through them like kind of 1 second each? All right. Phase 1, we're finishing up some work, high school, the track, baseball field. Area K is you're going to see that this summer getting ripped apart. There's also, let's keep moving through these. Yeah, there's also a lot of roofing work happening at the high school this summer and next summer. Phase 2, which we've just submitted to the state, which will start construction summer of 2022, has Boynton and DeWitt, LACS, a lot of the schools. We're just going to scroll through these. Certainly, if you have questions, let me know. But this information is available to you. And again, great facility committee meetings. We got OACM meetings. We have a lot of meetings. All right, we're going to pause on this for a moment. This is where we get to planning for the next sort of big phase. So we step back a little bit. We have done what we call facility evaluation. So our architects and engineers, have walked through your 1 million+ square feet of space, a couple hundred acres that you have under your supervision, and have done a kind of a more technical review of like, this is wearing out. That roof is the most important, and these other things. And so we prioritize those. There's no surprise if you can read the numbers, you'll see that it's a lot more than what you probably want to spend in the next phase, what you're able to spend. This is typical of school districts all across the state, right? So it's no surprise. Typical process, we go through, we prioritize, and we see what kind of rises to the top, and use that as part of structuring what the next phase of capital project work is going to be. We combine that with educational priorities and create a project out of that. Let's go to the next one. So this is some of just the very early thinking about what we call it phase 3 might be. Again, some of those infrastructure priorities, the Enfield roof, is something that's rising up to the top due to your staff and complaints and leaks and things just aging out. The Ithaca High School HVAC system, again, control systems, I'm not going to get into the details on that, but there's a fair amount of work there to improve the temperature control, and as part of that, add the lake source cooling to areas G and H. Okay, which are your
finally, providing air conditioning to G and H building.
Right. Those are your real workhorse, areas of Ithaca High School to get those students under some
upstairs.
Yeah,
in G&H.
yeah, you've been there, right? And so we take that and we combine that with some educational priorities, right? So STEM, supporting your STEM, you have great programs at Ithaca High School, and that area E, I think at E or F back there, that hasn't been upgraded in quite a long time. And so providing students with more opportunities to be able to do the work they're doing can be a benefit from renovating those spaces. Also media centers, cafeterias, and kitchens. This is some of the basic infrastructure that that can be improved here. The plan of Ithaca High School that we're showing right now, and these sort of yellow hatched areas, represent an idea that we've also started to talk about, in which the district offices and different personnel become embedded in Ithaca High School. And so the district office as a separate contained building could potentially go away, right? And you could then welcome students into that building, connect it to Ithaca High School. There are financial advantages for aidability to now be able to renovate some of that space. So that's some thinking that can combine the STEM space up in area E, the library in area F, the district office in area L, and potentially connect those two at the back of the school. So it's a very quick overview. Any questions or comments?
Nice job, Chris. That was
Is that 10 minutes?
That was well done. Really good. A lot of information, a lot of meetings encapsulated, and certainly any questions or comments. But as we talk about phase 3 and the out years and when that construction would happen, we actually planning for that really has to happen over the next 6 to 8 months. So this is front of mind, and this is the time to provide feedback and ideas and for this next tranche of investment in our buildings and in our community and in our students. But go ahead, any questions?
Well, I just want to note that you, although you did go through this very quickly, we all have your presentation in our documents. And so we are able to follow along and refer to it as needed.
Correct. But it would, as we move into the construction season, there are staging areas already set up, and there will be construction starting in some areas a bit before the end of school, but right at the end of school, there will be construction starting anew, but there is still construction ongoing from phase 1, the second year of phase 1, right? So there will be lots of activity in many buildings. So, and it's all listed.
Rob, the only thing I would add or ask actually is I remember when we do our building facilities audit for our community and the public to know that there are a couple $100 million of deferred maintenance at any given time. So some of the things that we're doing is trying to get out ahead of the deferred maintenance. We will never be able to complete everything. And Rob, you probably know better than me, attending all the OAC meetings, but last time I thought it was close to $400 million of deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed in various stages. So just felt it was important for folks to know that.
Thanks, Sean. I'm not sure it was that high, but it's always a large number because there.
Maybe that was Ithaca College then.
Yeah, you're getting your educational institutions mixed up, perhaps. That's just a drop in the bucket for Cornell. So just think of that every time we talk about these numbers. Any other questions? We will revisit, but incumbent on us, the board, to inform the community of what is being done and what is being planned for that $120 million bond referendum that was passed a few years ago. So every year there will be work done over the next, well, it's going to be a decade, just about, to continue the work that it started back in 2007, basically, with the first $98 million renovation that certainly helped this building. This Performing Arts Center was part of that. We are going to do some additions at some of the buildings, but it's going to be more interior work and changing, finally, the auditoriums per se at Boynton and DeWitt, and a lot of things that really, with carpet on the walls from 1970, it's okay to replace that now. And that will happen in the near future. Anything else, Dr. Brown? We good? Anything? Sean spoke. I think we're good. Chris, thank you for an outstanding report / performance, and
Well done, Chris.
well done and well practiced. Really, one last thing is just the academic calendar. I believe this was tabled until this meeting, so we do need to address it at this meeting because that is that is why we tabled it. And there are a few additions to it. Sean, do you want to just speak to it quickly, and we'll go ahead?
Yes, we had students come to us, and Eldred may remind me of the exact date, I think it was 3 years ago, to address our academic calendar, ask us to be much more culturally inclusive. We've been looking at our academic calendar for a number of years. Some things we are limited in terms of what our ability to change dates and or vacation days and or breaks. But we wanted to make sure that we created a calendar that while we may not be able to have days off of the academic calendar, at the very least, listed the dates of importance for various communities. We were looking at our students and we added 2 dates here, Diwali and the Lunar New Year. I would also recommend that we add the Festival of Eid on May 3rd of 2022. That be something that I would add on our calendar as well, the end of Ramadan. And so that's where we find ourselves. And if you look at the calendar, you will see that the dates of importance to make sure that we can at least acknowledge and recognize the various communities within the Ithaca City School District, and to remind us as board members, as teachers, as administrators, as educators, that we may have to give a little bit of a little bit of break for our students who may be celebrating various festivals, religious holidays, cultural holidays that may not align with the Judeo-Christian holidays that we typically include on our calendar.
So Sean, are we ready to vote on this? But with an addition?
That's up to the board. Yep. I would like to add the Festival of Eid on May 3rd of 2022.
Yeah, we may
It's on
want to,
there.
may wish to refresh.
I thought it was on there, but that's why I'm
You
looking
may have
it
an
up.
older version.
It's on there. May 2nd and 3rd.
I withdraw my motion.
Well, then, I would propose adding Orthodox Easter, which in 2022 occurs on April 24th, which is not a school day. So if you want to reject it, that's fine. I do not propose adding Orthodox Christmas because not all denominations of Orthodox faith follow the old Julian calendar.
I'm a little lost. Can you give us more background and insight into that date and its global significance?
Actually, Easter is what's known as a movable feast, so it does not occur on the same day every year. And Orthodox Christianity ties its celebration of Easter to the Jewish calendar. So it differs from Western Easter every year, but it differs between 1 and 4 weeks every year. But it is, in fact, a holiday celebrated by millions of Orthodox Christians around the world.
Thanks.
And the most important one.
In the Orthodox faith,
Yeah.
Easter is far more important than Christmas.
And in Christianity in general, Easter is more important than Christmas. Commercially, not
We
so
may
much.
forget that point, yes, having been raised in the United States.
So,
Well, I'm happy to add Pat's Easter.
Don't list it, please, as Pat's Easter. though.
I won't.
all right, yeah. Pat, you stepped on my joke, but that's.
And you know, guys, it's my birthday.
Ah,
So
Today, right.
what better
yes.
gift than recognition of a personally important holiday?
And what's the date again?
It is April 24th.
April 20th.
So Pat, are you making a motion to add that date to the calendar?
I think in keeping with the general sentiment of other important religious commemorations, I would make that motion.
Second?
So, Sean, are we voting on that motion to add and then voting on the calendar? I'm
That's
saying a
correct.
yes. All right. So Tricia, please, if you call the roll. We've discussed it a bit already. And we'll act on this.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle, Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole Lefebvre, Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichlin,
Yes.
Patricia Waslaw.
Yes.
Very good. And now can we go ahead and vote on the calendar with that modification?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I
I-
get the motion?
I move that we vote on the proposed calendar as recently modified.
Second.
Second by Chris and Tricia, please.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichlin,
Yes.
Patricia Waslaw.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. We got through a lot tonight. Frankly, the time isn't as bad as it might be. So, but appreciated the dialogues and we always like to hear from students, and that certainly was a great way to start out. And Dr. Brown, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, sir, it's a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And upcoming dates of importance, well, Memorial Day is next Monday. And enjoy that. Remember why we are celebrating Memorial Day, those who have served and those who have made sacrifices for the benefit of us all. So we'll do that this weekend. We're going to come back and have work sessions next week and
Policy.
meetings
and HR.
and all those things. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing forward. And as always, it's great to spend an evening with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yes,
everybody.
thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Are we still going to Skinny Atlas tomorrow?